Cuba's food was not the best. So I said, let's go to the nearest place with good food, obviously Mexico. And then we never left.
This is Talk Shop, and today we have Mak CK. That's your stage name.
Yeah.
Or Mak CK. Actually, he's somebody that I've known for a very, very long time as well. So, I always believe that, whatever someone has for breakfast actually tells me a lot about the person. So, yeah, I'm wondering, bread without kaya and butter, what does it tell me about you?
Yeah, what does it tell you about me?
Complicated. Yeah, you can't just give the auntie that normal set B, set C, but you have to give her extra information. So
that's right.
Complicated.
Yeah.
Square peg in a round hole, definitely someone who is always maybe can never go with what's normal.
Yeah, I think I'm more like a round peg in a square hole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Round peg at a square. Okay. Anyway, I can't believe you're here and actually in Singapore, because I know you've been away for a long time. But maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing, or what are you doing right now?
So I make documentaries for a living, which always feels good to say because not many of us can do what they want to do for a living. And I love making documentaries. I love making films. So I call myself a filmmaker. I used to stay away from that term because I think in Singapore there was a stigma during our time where if you're a filmmaker, it's like you are somebody. But then I've learned over the years that when you're a filmmaker, it just means that you do bits and pieces of everything. Sometimes you're your own editor, you pitch your own film, you market your own film, sometimes you shoot your own film, but you kind of do whatever it takes to get your film on screen or to screen. So yeah, that's what I do. Okay,
so what are you doing back here in Singapore? Maybe you could give me or give us a little bit of a track back on the last 5-10 years. I mean, scraping aside 2020, but before that.
So I started exactly 10 years ago. I started freelancing as a director producer. So I did factual TV for different channels. And then a few years in, I felt like I wanted to do more career-wise and life-wise. So with my partner, we packed our bags and we left on a one-way ticket to Canada.
Yep.
Because my first film got into hot dogs, which was in Toronto. And we both love Canada because we realized that the market and the funding for factual TV documentaries is really, really good. And we like the city and we all love Canadians. So we got our lawyers, we got visas processed, and then we had a summer to spend before arriving, and it has always been my dream to spend a summer in Latin America. So we did that, and then a month before we arrived in Canada, we thought, where should we go? So we were deciding in Cuba, and Cuba's food was not the best. So I said, let's go to the nearest place with good food, obviously Mexico. And then we never left. We never made it to Canada.
Switching off my phone. Yes.
And I fell in love with Mexico on day half. And
on day half?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought, how cool would it be to make a film here? Because I was traveling with my equipment the whole time, the whole summer. And then I found a story to tell. And then we decided to stay for 6 months to tell that story, for me to work on that film. And then 6 months became a few years. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think Mexico, I remembered you telling me about Mexico. You sent me postcards when you were in Mexico, and yeah, it was like a dream. I didn't really want to talk to you because I was extremely jealous. But I mean, if that film was one taxi ride.
That's right.
Correct. If I go back to, you did a few independent docs before that, right? There was The World's Most Fashionable Prison. That was your first?
That's right.
Correct. And then after that, there was Low People Big Dream, that was CNA, part of Channel News Asia,
Correct.
right? So, I mean, what I want to know is that how did you end up, your path from school all the way to deciding to be in this industry? Was it planned from school? Was it, where do you study, and after secondary school or poly,
Right.
where do you go after that? How do you get here?
Right. So I always believe that I'm very blessed in the sense that I knew what I wanted to do in life when I was a kid. And I think most of my peers didn't have that. So they spent many years wondering, figuring out, being conflicted. And some of them still do not know what their vocation in life is. So I knew when I was 8, maybe, that I wanted to be a filmmaker, like a director. I wanted to be Spielberg. When I was 14, I thought maybe I should go into media in Singapore. I didn't know what options were available. But by the time I had to make decisions, I knew that it was going to be one of that few. So I did the JC route because my grades were good enough, plus it felt like a safer bet than poly. And then I went into communication studies in NTU because that was the only degree available during my time. And this was in 1999. And a semester into that course in NTU, I spoke to my vice dean. I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't think the courses here are giving me what I want to do, to work on. And he basically told me that I went to the wrong school, that I should go to a poly. And I didn't have the guts to
Drop out.
Because
Wow.
I thought I've already done JC. It would be embarrassing to go to poly, or I can't possibly go all the way and not finish it with a degree. And I became the first degree holder in my family, which is a big deal to my family and to myself at that time. So I just went on and quote unquote wasted 4 years of fees and time. And then by the time I finished, I was 25.
Would you have done things differently? Would you have
I
left?
don't like to say I have regrets in life, but if there's one thing I would redo is that I would have gone to a poly,
Wow.
especially Republic Poly.
Why? Why? No, but at that time, Republic Poly did not exist,
I was
right?
just kidding. I was just plugging for you.
You don't need to plug anything. But I mean, why do you think that at that time, for you, skills-wise, or what you were learning in NTU, I mean, why do you think that the poly experience would have benefited you more?
The degree experience is very, especially with communications, is very all-encompassing. So there's a lot of theory, academia, conceptual ideas for you to take on, and a lot of just time-wasting modules, because it was a very new school.
You're being taken out from the alumni list.
Yeah, I know, but they still write to me. I'm still one of their thousands of subscribers. So there was a course that is like how to be a manager. It's not verbatim, but it's how to be a manager. So like, how do you deal with staff? How do you manage? And I was like, this may be useful for some people, but it's not what I want. And I know for a fact that polys are more technical. And I wanted to know about lenses, cameras, and lighting, so that it remains till today my Achilles heel. I self-shoot sometimes, but I can never call myself a camera person, or obviously not a DOP, because I just don't have that know-how.
Okay.
So my very first job was in MTV.
Yeah.
And Jen was my editor from a post-production house. And then I went down that route of working for production houses for 7 years. 7 years.
You were in
So
after MTV Infinite Studios, right?
Right. So I did a few production houses as a full-timer, kind of learning the ropes, buying chicken rice, transcribing, and then moved up to writing, developing, and then producing. But I wasn't given a chance to direct. So And I found a production place I could direct, and then so I started doing talk shows, game shows, cooking shows, travel shows, which were very, very fulfilling then, because I had never been directing before. But then it reached a place where I felt like the kind of stories I wanted to tell were limited. If you want to do it for a local broadcaster or even an international broadcaster, I think TV has a very strict format where it doesn't allow for many out-of-the-box storytelling. So if you do this format of a show, you need the host link lead into an interview, lead into montage and all that. So I eventually did my own thing. So I mustered the courage to freelance, and then I started my freelancing career by working on my first independent feature-length documentary. That gave me the confidence to then keep looking and keep having conversations with people about how do I do more of this.
So in order for you to master that courage, you had to work. In order to become a freelancer, right? It was beneficial for you to have worked in various production houses as full-timers. Do you think it's something that, I don't know, like students these days, do you think it's always beneficial to step into a full-time role first before, finding their freelance gigs and all? What do you think? I mean, there's never a right or wrong, right?
Right. So 3 days ago, I have a cousin whom I'm not really close to. Turns out he has an 18-year-old daughter who wants to go into media, and I found myself trying to give her advice about what she should do.
What do you tell her?
So I do believe that you should get experience working with different production companies, but maybe if you're starting out, maybe just choose one and then watch what people do, and then figure out, either by process of elimination, which I know you subscribe to, or by process of figuring out what you really want to do, and then kind of keep going down that vein and then see whether it clicks with you. I would encourage, but then again, I'm so out of touch with Zoomers that I feel like maybe there's something I really admire about millennials and Zoomers, which is that they don't have the baggage that a lot of us Gen Xers do, where we feel like I need to buy chicken rice for 1 year, serve coffee for 1 year, photocopy for 1 year, before I have the reason to ask to do something else. And I think that's why I took so long to find my calling, because I just felt I never deserved it. Who do you think you are? You think you deserve to be a filmmaker? You haven't even, transcribed 800 hours of footage yet.
Yeah.
And then we never ask for pay or for promotion, because we believe that it's given to us if we earned it. Which, if you ask for it, probably you didn't do your part. And I believe that hang up, the newer generations do not have, and I feel that they probably can go a lot further, faster than we have. I mean, what do you feel about that?
I think you're completely right. I admire. I mean, I think I'm on both sides. Like at one side, I admire this kids, right? Who they come out and they go, I am capable of doing this. I want this role. That confidence is something that I think I didn't have when I left school at all. But on the other hand, I'm like, I'm annoyed by them because they have that confidence that I didn't have. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether in the long run, that confidence will help them. Right. Will be something that because if you're overconfident, that's confidence and that's being overconfident, right? So where is that line?
Right.
For me, I'm not sure, but I'm old school. Yeah, it's like you work from being a PA to an assistant to before you can be an editor, before you can even touch to edit something, right? So I come from that school of hard life, hard knocks.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate when I see a good editor, someone new who is a good editor who actually risen rather than just given that role.
Right.
So I think I have a little bit more respect for those people. I don't know why.
Yeah, because you feel like they've earned it, right? So
Yeah.
it's a bit like back in the day, to have something on screen means that you've made it, but now I can be on screen on TikTok in 3 seconds and have 100,000 followers. And maybe that doesn't feel as gratifying because everyone's able to access that level of, exposure as quickly.
Yes. A lot of our students these days are, they want to go out, and when they graduate, they want to be content creators, right? So to be content creators, you need to be in the know. Okay?
Right.
So we've been talking about all these formats from the past, right? Being on television, seeing your name on the credits and feeling so satisfied, right? But like you mentioned, the kids these days, in 3 seconds, they can put up something on TikTok, right? And there you are, you have something on screen out to the world. So do you subscribe to all that? Do you put stuff out on social media or whatever social media?
So I use social media, but more as a voyeur. I want to see the kind of content that people are putting out. So I feel that as a content creator who wants to keep my rice bowl, I need to stay relevant in terms of knowing what's out there. I may not subscribe to it, as in I may not do what they do, but I feel like I need to know the climate. That's part of my job, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what's the climate?
So I think it's shifting really fast. So I spoke to my cousin niece, and I told her that to be a content creator, if you want to be one, is to be a master at adaptation in storytelling. So if you are the king of TikTok today, by the time you graduate, TikTok will be what Facebook is today. So you cannot keep chasing the tech. It's just like a camera person. You can't keep chasing the camera model. You have to master storytelling through the lens, right? So that whatever models of cameras come out, you are just using them to enhance your storytelling skills. So I feel that the climate now is obviously attention span is getting shorter, but who knows whether we will do a 180 at any point. Everyone goes back to black and white, super 16. We just don't know because trend is so unpredictable.
Yeah.
But we just need to keep abreast with what's happening so that we just know how to react when we need to react, I guess.
I don't know if you remembered your time as a volunteer in Botswana. In
Tanzania.
Tanzania. Yes, so he volunteered teaching? Was it? You just
Yeah.
went in as a... Do you know what you were doing, or...
Yeah, so
Tell us a little bit more.
it's a nice memory because it's also tied into you. I don't know if you remember when we were editing together,
Yeah.
there were 2 computers in your suite.
Yes.
So there was a spare one nearer to the window where I just kind of work. And then at that time I was yahooing for ways to spend my time in Africa. And one of them was
Really?
volunteering. Yeah.
Ways to spend my time. Why Africa?
Because but at that time I've been to like quite a few continents, and Africa to me represented the most exotic one, and the biggest challenge for a backpacker. And at that time I subscribed to the whole idea of chasing all these things. So I wanted to spend a long time in Africa, but I didn't want to just backpack, because having backpack is very surface. You just meet people, you move on to the next place. So, and then I found out about volunteering, and then I think one of the agencies was saying volunteer with us under the foothills of Mount Meru with a view of Mount Kilimanjaro in an orphanage. And I just applied and I got it. And basically what I did was I lived in an orphanage with about 25 kids and 2 caretakers, and I'll just teach English in the day at the primary school that they go to, and then when they come back I just play football and tuition or whatever. I was completely unqualified, but I wanted the experience, so I went, and that experience I spent about 4 to 6 months there, including a bit of traveling, and then that changed me as a 25, 26-year-old. very profoundly.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I came back and realized that I couldn't keep chasing these travel dreams. And then I started my full-time career in production houses.
Okay, so that came before your full-time career, because I didn't even realize
Yeah, they came before.
the timeline.
It was time to quote-unquote settle down.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was your settling down after,
Yeah.
volunteering and doing that backpacking expedition. You went to full-time. Okay, so you did your whole full-time stint, and then you realized that, hey, I have more stories that I want to tell that is not going to fit into the broadcaster's
Mold.
mold,
Yeah.
right, per se. So then the world's most fashionable prison came out. That was such an interesting documentary. Can you tell us how did this story about this prison in Philippines actually came into your life?
So I had a friend tell me one day that she read or she watched on the news, there was a famous Filipino fashion designer who teaches fashion in the maximum security prisons. And to me that is like, wow. And she said you should make a film about it. I haven't made films before about it, like feature-length docs, but she always saw my interest and she said this could be your first foray. That weekend I had Filipino friends in town.
Wow.
And I met one of them over dinner at Long Beach at Dempsey. And I just asked all the Pinoys, like, any of you heard of Boy Quinones? And the lady on my left just said, he's my best friend.
Wow.
And we got in touch over a
And that's
call.
the fashion designer.
Yes.
Okay.
We got in touch over a call, and then we were both excited to explore making a film about his work. Turns out that at the end of every year, he organizes a project runway competition,
Yeah.
which is where the film idea is. Because if it's just him teaching fashion, it's a nice news piece. But the fact that he has a 1-month competition of all these hardened inmates who are convicted rapists, terrorists, and murderers, but they all work together to create collections of
Yeah.
avant-garde, couture, and pret-a-porter and all that. So to me, and then the fashion designer Pue is classically a fashion designer, extravagant,
Yeah.
hilarious, very creative. So yeah, so we tried to find money for that film. It didn't happen for 2 years.
Oh.
Local broadcasters kind of gave me a look when I pitched them the idea. At that time, to feature an out, openly gay fashion designer as the protagonist is not gonna fly, even to today. So I had to look for money elsewhere. So 2011, I actually moved to the UK to expand my career. That didn't work out, but during my time there, I pitched to maybe 20 production houses this story, and they all loved it. And I had to make some difficult decisions. I was having meetings with Oscar winners about that film for me as a director, but I had to give up certain things, and in the end, I made that film on my own with a bit of help from an investor. And then we made that film.
Didn't you want to give up? I mean, I would have been like completely lost and probably just went, forget it, I'm just gonna not do it. I mean, why was that moment, if you can recall, that moment of like, I need this to get this film out no matter what. What made you just say, forget about finding X amount of money that I needed, I'm just gonna, even with this little bit, I'm just gonna do it?
It's hard to... I remember everything about that period in my life, which is about 10 years ago, but I don't have the answers because I didn't feel like I had other options. Because I wanted it so bad and nothing else that exists really attracted me. I remember I was given a very huge opportunity to work with one of the big commissioning editors in Asia, and I had an opportunity to work in South Africa, working for people. And these, maybe 5 years prior to that point, would have been very attractive. But by that point in 2011, I wanted to be heard through my films. And if I work for someone, I will always be facilitating their vision. So I wanted my vision out. And that story felt like it was meant to be told by me, because I felt a lot of synergy with finding the story, with the character, with everything. So there wasn't any other option for me. And in that film, I only produce and direct. I only produced and directed that. And then I quickly learned that if you want to get your vision out, if you want to get a film made, you have to wear more hats, so you don't have to rely on more people. So by my second film, I started doing sound and editing.
Which is Little People, Big Dreams.
And then with one taxi ride, I did everything. I pitched it, I wrote it, I produced, I directed, I shot, I sound recorded, I edited, I did the website, I marketed it. And you know, some people may say that
you're crazy.
No, that you're so poor that you can't afford anyone. But it's, to me, it's a skill set that is very valuable, because if I recognize a story that I like, I can get it on screen. Because I feel that I have the skills to tell that story, and it will get on screen. Whether it makes money or not, obviously, it's a completely different matter. But I'm not limited by my lack of funds because I couldn't get help.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a very, very valuable advice, right? It's like, you kind of need to, in today's climate, whether to let your, like create a film and get it out, or as someone who needs multiple skills. Like today, all the kids, you can't just be a camera person. You can't just be an editor. You kind of need to do motion graphics. You kind of need to do sound. You kind of need to do everything. You got to wear a couple of hats.
Right.
And I think you saw the advantages of that. Like, you didn't need to, hi, excuse me, I didn't have money, but can you help me with this? I think that always holds you back. Right?
I just hate begging. Yeah. And then more than I hate begging, I hate not being able to pay the person back. And that is like, why should they invest in my vision when they have so little to gain? So I feel like the onus is on me too. But I'm not encouraging everyone out there to like do everything on your own, because I feel like there's so much value in someone dedicating their careers to doing one thing and you working with them. Like when I work with you, I feel like you elevate my material and my vision.
Thank you.
Whereas if I edit my material, I'm just bringing it as high as I can. So ideally, I want to reach a place where everyone I work with are specialists in their own field, and then we can create like a masterpiece. But till then, I just have to rely on myself.
Yeah.
If I need to rely on myself.
Yeah, I think that there are time and place for that. Like now I know you have on one hand your passion projects that you can very comfortably jump in on every single role and do it as and when. Like, you want to follow a character, take the camera, go out and shoot, right? You don't have to figure out people's schedule. On the other hand, like from what I know, you have been doing projects that fits on the television screen.
Right.
Correct? And that's your bread and butter.
Right.
So how do you, does that work, that passion and filling up your pockets at least, having some survival?
I mean, it has been working for me. Obviously, I'm trying to transition to a place where it doesn't feel like I'm doing something for the sake of money, which I'm still figuring out how to get to. But I think the TV landscape is also changing, slowly, but it is changing. So I remember that when I pitched my second film, which is Little People, Big Dreams, which is about a dwarf theme park in China. It's like a Disneyland, but you watch Little People.
Very interesting.
When I pitched it to a local channel, they liked the idea, they liked the premise, but I was telling them that I wanted no narration in the film, no voice of God, no today, Jianchen is taking a train to visit his parents.
Yeah.
So everything has to be conveyed through the characters or through actuality, which I believe up to that point in 2014, 2013 was not done on that channel or in local channels. But we broke that mold. So right now, most of the content on that channel do not have the voice of God. And 2 years ago, I worked on another project for the same channel, and I said, I want to make a series, documentary series, where there are no talking heads. Like, you hear the interviewee, but you never see them. Again, that wasn't done before. Then they were like, but how do we know who is talking? But the international documentary community has been doing that for years. It's just that it hasn't reached Singapore yet. So we broke that mold, and now I'm working on another project that's doing the same thing. So I feel that it is doable. It's just that it may be slow, but maybe someone in my position who has done it can convince the commissioning editor in the channels to do it easier than if I was fresh off graduation, because I've sort of earned my portfolio, and they have a bit more trust. So I think eventually we'll hopefully get to a place where it's like in the UK or in Canada, where a TV documentary has as much critical acclaim, prestige, and respect than a documentary on the big screen.
That's the hope as well, I think. And I think like you pushing the boundaries, right? Pushing the envelope bit by bit, really to me all boils down to, because they have that trust and faith in you. Like you say, right? Any fresh grad that comes on, they're probably not going to allow that or take it easier. But because you have sort of proven yourself and you have excelled perhaps to their expectation on your previous project, so they're like, okay, I think Mark is probably right, let's go with him, so they're more willing to step out of that line, right? And I think that's not easy to do, to be brave to do that. And that's why I like working with Mark, because he pushes that boundary. So I mean, you mentioned just now, I just want to talk about this whole, you mentioned that the world's most fashionable prison actually really happened because you went for dinner with acquaintance, your friends, right? And over dinner that you mentioned this designer's name, and somehow then the connection all started falling in place. So to do documentaries like this, traveling around various parts of the world, how do you make these connections, man? How this whole networking web?
It's a full-time job to network, and I
You sound tired saying that.
No, I don't sound tired. It's just that I'm not very good at it. I'm just not a naturally networking person. I think networking takes you quite far. It takes you to doors, but finding ideas that are worthy of becoming a documentary internationally is the hardest thing. Because no one wants to hear the same story twice. And you are definitely not the most gifted. Okay, I'm definitely not the most gifted and skilled documentary filmmaker in the world. So there's always going to be someone who has an advantage over me in terms of access to stories and all that. So the only thing I have is my idea, right? But I cannot have an idea without access as well. Because if I have an incredible idea, someone would take the idea and give it to a more gifted filmmaker. So the idea has to be tagged to me, and that is access. So with this filmmaker, with this fashion designer, I have the access because I happen to I happen to meet someone who knows him, and we have a rapport, and we want to tell that story. So I have access. So when this documentary premiered in Hot Docs, it was a very big deal in my career, because Hot Docs is like the biggest documentary festival in North America, and I never expected to have my first film screen there. And then I met a lot of people who asked me, what is your next film? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like basking in this situation. And I really learned that you have to have the next film in your pocket while celebrating your current film. So I spent the next year wondering, am I a one-hit wonder like Vanilla Ice? Can't think of any more current
but
examples.
I can't think.
So I was so desperate that I Googled Weird Asia. I thought, okay, I'm Asian, so a lot of the filmmakers internationally are not. Maybe I have access to this part of the world. And then on the top 3, I think the second result was Dwarf Empire, which is the theme park. So I had previously 6 months prior worked with a fixer in China on a shoot for a channel.
You see, it's this networking
Right.
thing.
And this fixer and I really bonded over the way we work. And when we said we should work together on a proper project, a big project one day. So I said, hey Cindy, who is based in Beijing, I said, I found out about this theme park. Can you do some checks? Have they done films about it? Are they open to letting us film? So she did her stuff. She made a few calls and she's like, it's a possibility. And I was like, we need to put together a reel. And I have a channel that I'm going to pitch to in 3 weeks-ish. And it would be great to show them a reel. So Cindy was celebrating her 20th marriage or wedding anniversary.
20th marriage?
20th wedding anniversary. And they were planning a trip. So they used that money to spend it in Dwarf Empire.
You are kidding me.
So the
poor husband.
The husband is a painter who has a DSLR. So he just kept shooting footage, upload to me every night. I would edit, give comments. What else do we need? So by her end of her wedding anniversary, honeymoon, we have a reel. And we pitched it to the channel. And the first time in my life, even up to today, has never happened since. Everyone said, do not pitch this to anyone else. We want it. So like with no further questions, it's just like they want it. So yeah, that I guess is through networking and connections. But
and Cindy and her marriage.
Yeah, I mean they're still together.
Okay, good.
And yeah, so
that's I never knew.
It's an incredible story. Which the fact that she believed in
so
me,
much. To put her marriage on the line.
Yeah, I know. So that's pretty incredible. And so funny, that idea was maybe just random luck.
Yeah, I mean, you Google Weird Asian, I suppose there were many weirder things that came up in that list. I would have never Googled that.
Right.
Maybe that's why I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I can't find stories that people don't already know. But I remember when I watched that film, I was blown away because I have never heard of that particular place or never been in that. I don't know, it was just really, I think Disneyland is the right word to tag it with, because it's so bizarre. Everything about it was real but bizarre.
Right.
Yeah, it felt real, human. They're humans, but just bizarre.
Right, the mushroom houses and...
Yeah, I mean, they were going about their everyday, but then yet they had to go and perform.
Right.
You know, so it was just, Anyway, everyone should watch this. Little People, Big Dream. So back to this networking thing. Something about you that, for me personally and a mutual friend, right? I think it's your demeanor, your very calm persona somehow makes people drop everything and really, right, drop everything and say, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to fight this wall with you, I'm going to climb this mountain with you. I think it's you, right? It's how you carry yourself and how confident you sound as well. So were you always like that as a person?
First of all, thank you for the kind words. I do not agree with that perception. But I think what maybe makes people what about me convinces people to work with me is that I'm super dedicated and committed. Like, I don't drop out of something easily. And when I tell people I want to do something, usually I follow through. Because there's so many people who will talk about, even like holiday vacation. I'm going to go there one day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn the violin. But
They don't do it.
they don't do it. But I'm someone who's always so careful to a fault about saying what I want to do, because I have this weird thing where people are just going to say, hey, but you said you're going to do this X days, months, years ago. Have you done it? And then I'll be caught out and be embarrassed. I don't know where it came from, but I've always been like that. I'm always worried about being perceived as someone who is just all hot air. So I always follow through. I remember, I was walking down opposite Wheelock Place, and there's a Starbucks now, right? Remember there used to be a Burger King? Liat Towers, right?
Yeah. Beside Wheelock.
There was a staircase that
Yes,
goes
yes.
to a
Zara.
ATM, and then downstairs
Oh,
is
you
like
remember
Burger
Zara.
King.
Yes.
And I suddenly flashed back to, we hung out there before,
We did.
and we talked about your Australian friend who's called Ken, who was making a
Yes.
film.
Yes, in Hiroshima. I went
Yes.
to Hiroshima.
Right. And then I remember shortly after that, I was there alone with a notepad, writing down how many reels of 60mm film I need to make my first film. And then we had a call, and you promised me that, Mak, I would be your editor for your first film. And I remember all these things just walking down like 20 years later, and I felt really good about that memory, because I feel like, we are still in touch. Obviously, that's great, but we continue to pursue what we wanted to pursue. And I think the toughest thing about our industry is sticking to it. It's really, really hard. It doesn't pay the best. You work with a lot of and it's really discouraging. Clients are not always encouraging, and the only thing that keeps you going is your flame, and that's the only thing. And I think the people who stick out the longest may not be the best at what they do. They just tahan the best, which is someone like me. I just tahan and tahan and tahan. Yeah,
Do you think the flame will ever be...
that's my biggest fear in life, because once it's snuffed, then
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what else to do. Which is why I feel like I need to pursue things that I really believe in, so that the flame doesn't get snuffed.
I mean, like, what is your... I really don't like to say what is your 5-year plan, but what do you, in the next 1 or 2 years, do you have any of these passion projects, or what are some of your plans that you plan to go to in?
Well, right now I just want to get through the bloody pandemic. That is my 1 or 2 year plan. I mean, before that, it was to keep doing what I'm doing, but keep growing.
Okay.
I'm not really chasing anything specific. I'm just chasing growth. I just want to be put in situations I have not been in, and there are a few things in the pipeline which I'm not gonna jinx, but they will take me to places figuratively and literally that I've never been to professionally.
Okay.
And yeah.
So if you have like any, advice to perhaps an aspiring independent documentary maker, or someone who doesn't have to be documentary, but someone who have a lot of stories that they're just dying and yearning to tell, what would be the first step or first thing they should
I wish I knew the answer when I was starting out, because I know the answer. And this is advice not just to documentary filmmakers, but to everyone out there in this world. Find a mentor. A mentor can completely change everything. They can give you shortcuts. So you don't have to do 5 years of this to realize something. We can do it in a conversation over coffee. Or they can give you the confidence that you lack, or the assurance that you need, or the insight that you will never get till X number of years later. So you have your mentor, then you always have someone. And the mentor doesn't have to be, you know, the Oscar winner or the BAFTA winner. The mentor just needs to be someone in that realm that you are planning to hit your dart at. And they know enough to give you advice on forget it or try this or...
Yeah. Well,
I guess it's hard to find someone like that, but I'm always open to helping anyone who needs that. So like my cousin niece, I feel like, not that I'm a mentor in any way. Obviously a mentor still needs the apprentice or whoever wants a mentor still need to have a personal relationship that they feel is right. But I always feel like I have mined enough experience. I may not be the best at what I do, but I have enough to give you so that you can not lose so many years achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think very good advice. I think with this mentorship thing, right? I think it's quite a I mean, it's perhaps a little bit like this whole going to a company, let's say after you graduate and be an intern for 6 months to figure out, is this what you want to do? If not, go to somewhere else, right? And somehow in that space, maybe you can find that advisor, that guiding force, right? But I think the idea of that mentorship is, if that someone knows you, have that personal relationship with you, they know what you wouldn't know or you can't see.
Like, I think the problem with youth, right, is that you don't know what you do not know. Yeah. So you kind of open the door, but you can't even see more than 2 meters ahead. Did you have anyone?
Yeah, when I was in Infinite Frameworks, I think Lawrence was a big. Actually, a lot of people in Infinite Frameworks were a mentor to me because that was my dream place to work in.
Right.
And when I got there, I was like, wow, it's not what it is last time. Today is completely different. But Lawrence was a very big, I think, force to pursue what I wanted to pursue, because he's like this. He's like a semi-oldish man, and then when you see him edit like those like TV commercials that is like 30 seconds, so snappy, you're like, he's an uncle. But when he gets on the edit, he's like this young at heart. He finds the grooviest track and he's in this completely different world. So I remember yearning or craving for when he says, okay, why don't you do the first cut for me? For me at that time was like, wow, you trust me to do the first cut for you, So he was a big part of I think the start of my career at that time. So it was Lawrence for a very long.
Yeah, I remember it was Lawrence. I mean, it's
a lot of us there was Lawrence, right?
Right.
At that time.
And you know that he will watch your back.
Yeah. Completely.
Like he's not gonna throw you under the bus.
No. But the other thing now, recently you were a speaker in this thing about mental health and storytelling. I was your picture completely sold me, but I had a meeting on that day. I couldn't turn out. But what's this connection between mental health and storytelling?
So I think mental health is a phrase that's been more used in the last few years. Basically, it touches on anything that to do with mental health. Like it could be depression, could be suicide ideations, it could post-traumatic stress disorder, anything to do with the well-being of a person. And I think a lot of stories are discussing mental health. It's just that we didn't have that label. So they invited me to be part of a panel to discuss how to tell stories about mental health. How do you engage with characters? How do you create a safe environment for them? How do you protect your subjects and all that? Yeah.
Was it what was the turnout, or what was the outcome of that?
It was just for us, there were 3 of us on a panel from 3 countries to be able to share our experiences so that storytellers or people interested in storytelling can hopefully get some value out of a discussion.
Okay.
because I mean, One Taxi Ride, the last film of mine that got released, is about mental health, right? So it's about a male rape survivor, and I always thought that the film was about a man who survived being raped and what happens after that. But then I realized that it is a story about mental health, because the rape is just something that happened in that one night, but then you have the rest of your life to continue living, right? So actually the film is not about what happened at night. The film is about the years after that. And so in a way, I didn't have the vocabulary to understand it then, but in a way I was following someone who faced trauma and was trying to survive trauma and process trauma. And we captured it on camera, and that was his story. And that experience completely educated me about this whole world of mental health, and obviously filming someone who experienced trauma.
But I think, I think also that this whole, anyone who's going through mental health, the difficulty is always about being heard, correct? So using the tool of storytelling in whatever form can be a prescription, perhaps.
Completely,
as well, in whatever form. It doesn't have to be a documentary or full-fledged doco or anything, but somehow, because they need to be heard, they don't want to feel alone. So having that listening ear, that audience, could be one of the best prescription, perhaps.
Yeah, because I think when you have a camera in front of someone, whether it's a travel show, a talk show, a cooking show, you are indirectly telling the person in front of the lens that you have a voice we want to hear that's worthy of audiences. And that is very empowering. So especially if you're in a situation where you doubt your own voice, then that helps you overcome that to a certain degree.
Just like that's why we invited you today.
I know. I feel like you're giving me my voice.
Yes, always. I mean, plus you said that you've spoken in Ngee Temasek. Felt that RP has to be the next, right?
I know.
We have to give you this platform. The other thing that, I've been the biggest takeaway that I think from you, that it's the biggest takeaway for me, is that you were not afraid. You basically dropped a lot, sacrificed a lot, dropped everything, and left Singapore, left the comforts of Singapore. Not many people can afford to do that. I just want to know, what were your feelings before the decision that made you say, okay, I'm just going to go? And, of course, living in different parts of the world and doing what you do, obviously there were attachment to families back home. You're worried about your family as well. So how, if someone wants to, I mean, a lot of students in Singapore, a lot of young adults, they're like, I want to travel the world, I want to do this and that. I mean, what would your advice or thoughts about how does someone actually make that decision if given the opportunity to do so?
I think I was, and I'm very privileged. So my parents were and still are in relatively good health. I have a sibling who can be on standby if they need anyone. And I was in good health. I am in good health. So the only thing that was stopping me were financial considerations. So I saved up an amount I felt comfortable relocating with, and everything else was just here, right? Like, can I make it? What if I don't earn money in X number of months? What if I miss home? What if the other society rejects me? But it's just all here. Like, I'll never have the answers till I do it. So I guess my desire to make it was stronger than my fears. And I generally don't have an attachment to material financial things. So that also helped. I think some people are a bit more worried about, how the chips are going to fall. Whereas I'm always one to throw caution to the wind and just let's bet on myself and see what happens. So, and I left at a time where my career was about to take a steep incline in a good way monetarily. So if I had stayed on, I knew that I could make a lot more money, relatively comfortably, easily. But then I knew that if I have that kind of income, I will never leave. Like if I'm too comfortable, I will never be able to escape the appeal of being comfortable. So just before that pivot, I just say, let's just screw this, let's just go. So it was scary, but at the same time, it's not that scary because I didn't live through it to give it up. I haven't technically given up anything yet, so I just went for it. And it still is one of the best things I've done in my life, to not worry too much and just go. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? I always telling my parents that I've got enough qualifications and experience to come back and make a living somehow. Like, I'm not going to be down and out on the streets, but I want to live my dream. And my dream is not necessarily defined already. My dream is actually just chasing for something. So by like the whole few years I was making One Taxi Ride in Mexico, I always thought if the film didn't pan out well, for reasons within and beyond my control, I would have been completely at peace because every day in Mexico felt like a blessing. Like I felt alive. I would finish a shoot at 12 midnight, Uber back, and then in the car I'll be like, I'm living my dream. I'm making a film in a country I love. Like, what more can I ask for? Like it's that's what I want in life. So at that point, I didn't really care whether the film went to where it could go. I just thought I want the process to be as satisfying as the product, and it was, if not more.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I have from this was like you to be content, right, with even the smallest thing. It doesn't have to reach, I don't know, 100 million followers or 100 followers, but just to be content that, you know, have small little milestones and goals, I think, instead of that unreachable thing. So yeah, qualifications is one thing because you knew that you had that qualifications to as a fallback. Right. So you were like, okay, I'm just going to do this anyway. I'll come back and I'll find another job and move from there. But yeah, so yeah, students, please be qualified. Finish your school.
I wouldn't have the guts if I didn't have enough to fall back on. But then also that I think it's contestable, you know?
It is. I mean, there are a lot of crews in the production world that they didn't need qualification. They are great at what they do, right? Because of the experience and the time and the effort that is put in. So it's debatable, I think. But the fallback thing, to have a qualification as a fallback is always, I guess, for your family and for yourself as well, peace, right?
We're still Gen Xers after all, so that qualification is important to us.
Yeah, I know, and Singaporean. I think I have almost completed everything that I wanted to ask. And I mean, do you have any advice for our students? I give you a little bit of a background. Our students we are from the Diploma in Media Production and Design. So our students, when they leave, they are content creators, right? We want to position them as content creators. They are skilled in video production as well as, you know, the whole graphic, collateral, transmedia world, 360, immersive, whatever new technologies that's going to come up in the next couple of years. But that's how they are going to position themselves in, right? So what would be your one or a couple of advice that you could give them?
Oh gosh. I would say I'm going to contradict myself. I'm going to say don't overplan it. Don't overplan your career. Just absorb and learn as much as you can in school. Just don't create boundaries for yourself like, oh, I'm only doing this because I'm not gonna be doing that because that's not viable. Like, this is the one chance you get where you just absorb and learn and help out your friends with their projects and build a portfolio. And just because you're a student doesn't mean that you cannot create something quite kick-ass that can help you launch your career. The other advice is you have to start planning. Like, you have
You
to.
just contradicted
I
yourself.
know, and you can choose which answer you prefer. But at the back of your mind, you have to be able to recognize that everything that you do and engage in can be a stepping stone, can be an exploration, can be a connection that can further your journey once you exit the gates of Republic Poly. And there is not, it sounds like a contradiction, but inherently they can coexist.
Okay.
I feel like when I am socializing as just myself, not with any attachments to work, I feel like I'm also at the back of my mind thinking, is here a good story that would fit down the line into a project I'm working on? Is this a good ally to have because I may need a TikTok creator down the line? Like, you're always filing.
I know.
You're always filing.
Yeah.
It sounds slightly exploitative, like everyone's an opportunity, but I feel that it opens up your world that way.
Yeah.
Because you're not limited to, okay, I just got a project to work on today. I have to start looking for people to work with and resources now. No. You already have it all somewhere. You just need to access Drive C, folder D, and there. Right? I remember this person from 5 years ago. And that's how a lot of us work today. Like, I spoke to this guy who was interesting at a dinner party 3 years ago. He's on my Facebook. Let's see if he knows someone that I can work with. And more often than not, they end up being very, very helpful.
Make friends. I think keep your circle alive and vibrant, right?
Yeah. Make friends are not just people, but like, let's say I'm doing After Effects that I may not like, but I'm doing it. But then that could be a skill set that you may need 5 years later for something, you just do not discount anything you do. Secretly file them. Don't empty cache so fast.
Okay.
Never reboot your hard drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep it backup of a backup.
Yeah. Backup for backup.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mak.
Yeah. Thanks
That's
very
all.
much, Jen.